I'm Sarah,
And I'm Chelsea.
and this is Weathered. All right. Hello. Welcome back.
It's been a minute since we've recorded.
I know. And we actually said that on one of the previous episodes that we were going to do better about being more consistent. So we're reminding ourselves again.
Yeah, because through the holidays, we did not do so good with that.
It's
But it's a new year. We're moving on.
a new year. Here in the greater Cincinnati area, we still have a ton of snow on the ground.
Ugh. We have no snow, but it has been the coldest weather I've ever felt, like in Nashville, not ever felt, but in Nashville. It's been like 6 degrees, which is crazy.
I know. Same here. Today is a heat wave. It's 31 and feels like 23.
I literally just said that. I was like, it's 33 outside.
I don't even need a
I'm
coat.
hot. I know. That's funny. Thought,
I
thought,
when I went to work yesterday, I was so cold, and all the people at work, because I'm from the South, I'm not from up here. All the people at
Mhm.
work were like laughing at me, like, "Oh, this isn't even cold," and I was like, "No, but it is."
I know. I know. It is for us people.
Yeah. All right. Well, today we're going to talk about the Great Galveston Hurricane.
Ooh, a
Uh,
hurricane.
yeah, a little bit different
Okay.
this time. And
Love it.
it's also an old timey one. It happened in 1900.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's old timey. I was thinking of, I have friends that live in that area and visit
Hmm.
Galveston often. And so I was thinking of them because this storm really affected Galveston. It basically destroyed the whole city. They had to completely rebuild, which I know hurricanes have a tendency to do, but
Hurricanes, I feel like, tend to be like, it's hard to say which one's worse, but I'm like, hurricanes
yeah,
are pretty bad.
I know it's all bad. Um,
Yeah.
it's just so different.
Hmm.
I'm sure that my people that live in hurricane areas, you guys, if you're listening to this, just comment, send us an email, and tell us your
Yeah.
experience because we are not used to hurricanes. I
Nope.
did live in Charleston, South Carolina for like a minute, and we didn't experience anything while I was there, thank goodness. But
I've never experienced anything like that. When I lived in Oregon, the closest thing was when we went there, you might have seen there's like tsunami zone, like you're in a tsunami zone and you're like, what?
yeah, our pictures from
Okay.
there are on our website when it was so stormy at Cannon Beach that day.
It was horrible, but we had fun anyways.
Yeah. All right.
Okay,
So,
Galveston.
yeah, let's get into it. So the Great Galveston Hurricane, this was on September 8th, 1900 in Galveston City, Texas. They were hit by a Category 4 hurricane, which is still known as the deadliest natural disaster in U.S. history.
Oh,
I know. In 1900, the U.S. Weather Bureau, which is now known as the National Weather Service, knew about this hurricane as early as August 30th. So remember, this happened on September 8th. The Weather Bureau knew about it on August 30th, so about a week before
mhm.
the devastation happened. And they saw that it passed over Cuba on September 4th and over the Florida Keys on September 6th. But they predicted that it was going to turn and go northeast along the United States coastline.
Mhm.
But boy, were they wrong.
Uh-oh.
It ended up continuing to go west, picking up speed and intensity through the Gulf
Mhm.
of Mexico toward Texas.
Yep.
And yeah, so we know that you can't always predict exactly what's going to happen, but you'll hear in this story that the local weather people in Texas knew that the Weather Bureau was wrong.
Mhm.
And it just, with all these layers of things, it just really
Made
caused,
made everything a lot worse.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So at this time, the Weather Bureau basically relied on reports from ships out at sea to predict hurricanes. So
Okay.
I thought that was interesting. Um,
That
basically,
makes
like,
sense to me back then.
yeah, people, the ship captains would alert if they
Yeah. I mean,
experienced a storm.
makes sense.
Messages were communicated via radio and telegraph from the ships. So, Galveston's chief meteorologist and head of the entire Texas section of the U.S. Weather Bureau, Isaac Klein, he had a hunch that something wasn't right. He could tell that the weather was getting really bad, and he knew that the Bureau's prediction was wrong. So,
Mm.
Isaac Klein played a huge part in this. He was a badass, and he was well known. If you look him up, I mean, he was a well-known meteorologist. He oversaw all of Texas, but he was actually in Galveston.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, everyone respected his weather predictions, and so I guess it could have been even worse if Isaac wasn't there.
Sure. Yeah. Obviously, because somebody got it wrong.
Yeah. And wait till you hear like how that happened. It's really sad.
Oh.
And Isaac had often stood up to Washington, D.C. before and been right. And I'll talk a little bit more later on why standing up to DC was even a thing. But so on September 7th, so this was pretty much the day of when it was arriving, he went ahead and ordered for hurricane flags to be flown on the beach in
Mhm.
Galveston.
Good.
So normally, he really wouldn't have had that ability to just do that on his own without the Weather Bureau backing him. But he was like,
We're doing this.
we're doing this.
Yeah. Good for you.
I know. Good for Isaac. On the morning of the 8th, he got on his horse and buggy and rode down to the beach to tell people to get to higher ground. He was like, I am the sole person. If no one else is going to listen to me, I'm getting on my horse. And I picture him as just like riding through town and just like yelling in people's
That's
houses.
exactly what he did in
Yeah.
my mind. I mean,
Yeah.
also, like, I kind of forgot this was 1900, and I was like, horse and buggy. And then I was like, oh, yeah, we're okay. Okay. I forgot.
Yes. So at least he had that means to get around.
Yes.
So he got on there, he rode around to tell people to get to higher ground. Now, in Galveston, the highest ground in the city was only 8.7 feet above sea level.
Oh my gosh. So
So,
there is no higher ground.
right. And
Okay.
soon the storm surge would be 15.7 feet above sea level.
Oop.
So there was no hope really
Yeah.
or anywhere for them to go.
Right.
So when I heard that, I thought, we hear storm surge all the time, but again, with us not being from a coastal area, I really
We don't
didn't.
get it.
I was like,
Yeah.
storms. It sounds like, the storm is surging, like, but what does that actually mean?
Right.
So I looked it up. And so, what is a storm surge actually? It is an abnormal rise in sea level caused by a storm. So,
Okay.
yeah. So it's measured as the height of the water above the normal predicted tide. So, fun fact, as we know, the tides happen because of the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Got it.
seawater level is highest, which I didn't know this. We knew like the tides are affected by the moon and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But seawater level is highest during new and full moons.
That makes sense to me, though.
I know, but I never thought of it.
But
So,
well, I didn't either, but that makes sense.
storm surges are actually going to be worse if they coincide with a full
If,
moon or a new
and
moon.
let me guess.
No,
Oh,
actually,
okay.
well, what were you going to say?
I was going to say it was a full moon.
I actually looked that up because it wasn't stated in any of the research that I looked at. So I looked it up, and you can look up, what was the
Oh
moon
yeah.
on that date. So it was actually on September 8th, 1900. The moon was a waxing gibbous.
Okay.
So I had to look that up. And that is the one that's right before the full moon. So
Okay.
it
I
was
should know. I have
close.
it tattooed on my back, but
So
who
it's the
knows? I
one
don't look at
that's
that.
like most of the
Almost
moon is showing with a little sliver of black.
got it. So almost.
Yeah. So I wonder how much that contributed to how
How bad
bad
this
the
was.
storms. And so for those of you out there who live in a hurricane area, if you're
Let
thinking
us know.
about whether to evacuate, look at the moon
Look
phase.
at the moon. It
Yeah.
all just comes back down to the solar system.
Yep. So I thought that was interesting. So basically, the storm surge is telling you how much the height of the water is going to rise.
Right.
And, but as we saw, Galveston is already barely
Yeah.
above sea level, which I think they've done a lot since this storm happened to change that. But at this time, they didn't have much wiggle room.
Yeah.
So the winds increased steadily throughout the day. And shortly after 6 p.m., they were over 100 miles per hour. And in just another couple of hours, they were estimated to be over 130 miles per hour.
Yeah. That's fast.
And it's funny because we talk about tornadoes coming out of nowhere. But back then, and especially as we'll see, since they didn't really have the warnings from the Weather Bureau, they really didn't know until it was happening.
Yeah. Again,
Um,
when you're all these older stories, like there just wasn't a lot of hope for them because there
yeah,
wasn't you know, what am I trying to say?
the predictions and the
Yeah.
technology that
Technology. That's the word.
your brain broke for a minute. Mine does that a lot.
Mine is always broken.
So, yeah, they were actually, and not only did they not have necessarily warning, but they were being told that it wasn't coming their way.
Right. So
The
it's not
weather,
really their fault either.
right.
They're being told the wrong thing.
Yeah, they were being told it was going to go up the East Coast and it was coming across.
Mm-hmm.
So all they knew was winds were picking up and it was getting darker. So, with the waters quickly rising, the people of Galveston started trying to get to sturdy structures and higher ground. And one of those places was actually Isaac Klein's house. So, that meteorologist guy, he had a
We love
pretty big,
Isaac.
yeah, he had a pretty big, had a pretty sturdy home. And so he started just telling people to come to his house. Like, we'll be safe there. Just come to my house.
Love him.
So I know, such a
Sweet,
caring
sweet
person.
little Isaac.
Over 50 people tried to take over, or sorry, take cover at his house. And unfortunately, that didn't go
Uh-oh.
well. As the winds picked up, an actual railroad trestle. So again, this is like 1900. A railroad trestle was ripped up by the wind and slammed into the side of his house. And houses back then, I mean, even though it was sturdy, it wasn't going to take
It
a
wasn't like a,
railroad trestle at, 120 miles per hour or whatever,
yeah.
slammed into the side of it. And so that caused his home to sort of buckle, and then the waters just washed it away.
Oh no.
Yeah. So through the night, houses were carried away by the rushing water and high winds, and basically the entire city was destroyed.
Mm,
Um, I mean, I think the rushing water and the high winds, like the houses just couldn't sustain it.
yeah.
And you'll hear from some of the stories of people that survived what that was like. Um, it's freaking wild.
Traumatizing.
Yeah.
Like to survive that and to see that and then have to live with it. Oh, it's just awful.
Oh, just wait.
Oh,
Just
oh
wait at what they lived
no.
through.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
let's get to it. Ugh.
So thousands of people ended up dying. Numbers were reported between 6 and 12,000 people. Um, we've talked in our past episodes about how the recordings of things like that were not even accurate back then, so you can't be totally sure. But they report anywhere between 6 and 12,000 people died. And the survivors, like we just said, experienced some of the worst trauma possible. So going back to how did this happen? Like, how did the Weather Bureau get it so wrong? They had no warning. Isaac was doing his best. But what in
Yeah.
the world
What
happened?
happened?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, researchers believe that the storm started in Cape Verde. I hope I'm saying that right, in West Africa.
Okay.
So, West Africa, and then it went directly west of there toward Puerto Rico. The interesting part about the Cape Verde Islands is there's just a ton of hot water,
Right.
which is perfect for storm formation. It's
Hmm.
basically just a mix of constant heavy rains and thick, humid air and heavy wind.
Yeah.
And
So like
that's
the
what starts.
perfect. Yep.
I think still most hurricanes start in
Start over there.
and come this way.
That's what we see.
hmm So, researchers found reports from a ship captain on August 27th, 1900. So, remember, this hit Galveston on September 7th into September 8th.
Okay.
And this report, the first report that they found was from a ship captain on August 27th. So, he was somewhere near Cape Verde and he
Hmm.
documented, like, guys, this is really bad
This
weather.
is bad.
Yeah. So, this is believed to be the first sighting of the storm. And then the next report came from Cuba on September 1st. At
Okay.
this time, Cuba also seemed very worried about this storm. They said, this
Yeah.
is bad, guys. On September 3rd, they tried to warn the US. Okay, so Cuba first reported it on September 1st. And on the 3rd, which is about 4 or 5
Right.
days before,
Hmm.
they tried to warn the United States. However, due to some pretty petty political arguments
Oh,
that
I
the
just
U
knew you were going to say that.
that the US was having with Cuba, there was some major communication issues. Basically at this time the US had totally cut off telegraph communications from Cuba.
Right.
And this is why like politics should never be a part of the weather, and we talked about how like the National Weather Service and all that, it's a government entity. So
It is.
you got to realize that these are real things that will happen between nations, but
Right. We still
that
got to talk to
contributed.
each other.
I know. You would think at
The
least the
whole,
meteorologist could have like a sidebar.
well,
Like,
you'd think, but this is 1900
that's true.
and
They
they're
didn't
under
have like
Castro.
texting.
Yeah. Castro was like,
um, so yeah, it can cause loss of life and all that. So hopefully, even maybe now, even if the governments aren't getting along, you got some like weather buddies who are having side conversations. But that's what was happening. It got so bad also that not only were they cutting off telegraph communications, but they were basically, they being the United States
Mhm.
Weather Service, were basically saying this isn't a hurricane because Cuba was saying it was.
Right. Like how could they tell us the truth? Like they hate us. We hate
They're
them.
lying. They don't know
Right.
what they're talking
They can't be
about.
trusted.
Yeah.
Oh my
So they're like, no,
gosh.
no, no, it's fine. It's not even a hurricane. Like, stop trying to scare us.
I'm so mad.
Kind of thing. Yeah. So that's why Washington, D.C. was sort of refusing to say anything about it and kept telling Isaac Klein in Galveston that he had nothing to worry about. Like,
Right.
don't worry. Even though he knew, and he kept
Yeah.
asking them, can we issue something? Like, what is going on? I can just tell from the weather patterns that this is looking bad. But they kept saying, no, no, it's fine. They were also telling him it would travel up the East Coast.
Hmm.
And at this time, it was actually required that people in Washington, D.C. at the Weather Bureau, they were the only ones that could issue hurricane warnings. So it was very difficult for local weather services to get all that approved and issued in a timely fashion. So it's
Hmm.
kind of what I was saying earlier. Even though Isaac knew and he wanted to get the word out in
I just
advance,
wish they would have been like, screw you. I'm posting it anyways, you know?
yeah, yeah. And he did eventually, but by that
Right.
point, it was too
With
late.
his horse and buggy.
Yeah. So luckily, Klein finally just said, forget this. I know something's wrong. And he tried his best to get people to safety. But it's unfortunate that basically it was too late.
Hmm.
People couldn't get away in time, and the storm was already upon them.
Yeah. Too late.
Yeah. And so we kind of heard earlier the worst of it was the high winds and the storm surge that basically flooded the entire city and just took out all the homes and people. It was at night, really, because it had kind of gotten picked up throughout the day, but it was throughout the night that it really got bad. And that is just, we talk about that with tornadoes
I was
too.
just about to say, we talk about this all the time. It's like
Mhm.
all of the worst of it happens at night when you can't see, you're not prepared. Like, it's just that's even, it just makes it so much worse.
Yeah, definitely. You can't see what's going on. People are
And it
sleeping.
happens every single podcast we do, every story. It's like almost the same, except for the Nashville that happened during the day.
Yeah, like afternoon.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, so unfortunately, a lot of people didn't survive, as we heard, several thousand. But after that, so the days following were almost worse than that night. And so the aftermath is what we're going to talk about now and kind of what they were seeing. And then I'm going to have you read a few of the survivor stories so you
And I
can
haven't
hear.
read them yet, so we're going to be reading them together. So,
Yep, you're going to react while you're reading.
yes. Yes.
So, okay, so the aftermath, as the citizens of Galveston began to come to grips with the initial shock and horror surrounding them, they realized the most immediate task was to find a way to deal with the massive carnage. Yeah. So there's just like bodies everywhere,
Yeah.
and you're in this like heat
Ooh, yeah.
and the water, everything's wet. Like, do you remember when we had that flood in Nashville?
Oh, the
Which,
flood.
yeah, which maybe
We
we'll
should
do.
cover that. I was going to
Yeah.
say that's definitely an episode.
Yeah. That, because I don't even know, like, we'll save it for when we do the episode because I don't even really remember what you were doing that day. And you probably don't know my story from that day, which is wild too. But we'll talk
I
about it when we
don't
do the
remember.
episode.
Yeah, I'm going to have to think back on that.
And, but what I was going to say about that was I volunteered with Hands on Nashville after that to go
Hmm.
help clean up and like pass out waters and stuff. And when I went to Dixon to help clean out like houses, it
Oh,
was
no.
awful. I was like, I don't even remember how old I was. I was in my early
You were,
20s, I guess.
I had to have, I was really young too.
Yeah, like
Not really. Well,
teens.
actually, I don't
You were
think so
probably
because
like late teens, maybe
I
20.
had to have been a little older than that. I think I remember like going to Three Crow or something like, if you're from Nashville, shout out Three Crow. Okay. You know, if you know, you know.
Yes. I was working, but that day was wild. But it was so disgusting.
Well,
After I
yeah.
spent a day like ripping out nasty, wet stuff from these homes, I was like, I can't do this. So then the next time I volunteered to just pass out waters. So I went to like an
Yeah.
elementary school and people would just pull up and we would like load bottled water into their trunks.
Sure. I
Um,
mean,
that was
the
more
heat,
my,
the water, the plumbing,
yes,
I mean,
yes.
it all goes together to
Yeah.
not make such a great scenario.
So that's kind of, and then just add like dead bodies to that.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And that's
Much
what these
worse.
people were dealing with.
Yeah.
So, in his memoir, Galveston Daily News correspondent Ben Stewart offered this graphic account. So this is Ben Stewart's memoir. This is a quote. And it's funny because in other podcasts, I hear people talk about the way that media wrote back then was so much more like poetic. I mean,
Right.
nowadays it feels like they just write it in 5 minutes and there's,
Mhm.
grammatic crap but these people knew what they were doing and talked so eloquently even about horrible things like this.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So this is a quote. It was determined to load the dead on barges, tow them to sea, and cast them into the deep. This was done, and the gruesome spectacle then presented is one none who were witness desire to see again. Many of these bodies were again cast ashore by the currents, and it was seen that some other method must be invoked.
Oh.
Burial on the spot where found, or incineration, generally the latter, were the only practicable methods, and they were pursued for more than 6 weeks.
Oh.
There were huge piles of burning wreckage in which bodies of victims were being consumed.
Okay, so they had to do something with the bodies, so they had to burn them.
They tried putting them out to sea and they just gave
Yeah,
up.
I mean, that wasn't smart, really. But what are you gonna do?
I feel like there's a movie or something where like Vikings or something do that, don't they? Or yeah,
Listen, you know me. I love my Vikings.
they're I watched
uh,
maybe it was that. Oh man, I'm not gonna be
there's
able
a
to.
show called Vikings.
It might have been that. But when
I've
they
seen it.
die, they put them on like a little wooden, and I'm
Raft.
sorry if you're like a Viking heritage and you hear this and it's way wrong. But they put them on this like wooden thing and they like push them out. But I
Cast them
think
out.
like burn them at the same time or something like
Yeah,
that.
you can't just cast. You can't just like send them out. They're gonna go somewhere.
They're gonna wash
They're
up
gonna
like
end up. They're
down the
going
way.
somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that was failed.
Yeah.
And so then they started burning.
That is a
And
better option, sadly.
Galveston's not very big. So, or at least it wasn't then. I'm sure it's bigger now.
Yeah.
But so it was just kind of everywhere.
Mhm.
All right. So with that, let's read some of the survivor stories.
Okay.
Um, and
All
here,
right. Again, I'm reading these with you guys. We're doing this together.
yeah. Okay.
Okay. So the first one is from Caroline Harris. This is a 1986 interview. So this person is very old. I mean, she's recounting obviously 86 years ago. So,
Yeah.
but she said her and her brother went upstairs and sat on a mattress with the water up to their chins all night. She
Oh my,
described hearing screeching all night, which she came to find out were nails ripping out of the house. The next morning, they realized their house had washed away across the harbor.
can you,
So
she said,
she was in the house while
yeah.
that happened,
And they were upstairs with
and it was
water
to
up to
their
their chin.
chin. And she survived that. I wonder if her brother survived.
Yeah, I know she didn't
Um,
say.
really interesting. And for her to have that interview 86 years later is quite wild too.
Yeah.
Mm,
I feel like that interview was just about what happened that night, but she was
yeah,
probably there for all of it
yeah.
afterwards too. So,
Oh yeah, I'm sure she saw all that happening.
hmm.
Okay. Number two, we've got Theo Thompson and Vivia Addison. Such a pretty name. Okay, so Saturday morning, they were noticing the waves and the water rising. So I'm guessing Saturday is like the 7th, that the day of.
Yeah.
So that
Mhm.
morning, shit's happening. 4:30 p.m. they started getting scared because a smokestack fell near their house. They started seeing frantic people running into the courthouse seeking safety. They talked about the alley between their house and the courthouse being the alley of despair.
Mm.
125-mile-per-hour winds and surging water. They were just watching people getting taken out by it trying to escape. 8 p.m., men at the courthouse tied ropes to themselves so as to be able to wade through the treacherous waters and come to rescue the women, or they
Mm,
came to rescue the women. So they're
mm.
literally like tying so they don't float away.
Yeah.
Oh, this went on all night. The storm stopped about 2 a.m., and by 6:30 a.m., the alley was dry.
Isn't that wild?
Like, I guess it all that water just gets sucked back out. And that's
Yeah.
wild. Um, that morning, then they all started to realize that there was no food or water. They made coffee with salt water. By Wednesday, they said all they could smell was dead and burning bodies. Finally, on Thursday, they were taken in a boat to Texas City, thankfully to be alive.
Yeah.
That's Theo Thompson and Vivia Addison.
And we kind of like summarized their story, but if you look it
Yeah.
up, there's more, and they talk a little bit more about the courthouse and how it was kind of across the alley from them,
Mm-hmm.
and they were just kind of like watching. I think
Watching.
about it how we would be
Yeah.
like when do you make that decision? Like,
To
oh
go
no, I
out.
gotta go.
Like, you're outside, you're watching it, you're like, well, surely it's not going to come to us or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're
Mhm.
like, what? We got to do
Yeah, the
something. We
water's
can't just
here. We
stay
gotta
here.
go.
Yeah. But it's like, is it too late? Like, do we tie ropes on it? Like, what are we doing?
Yep. And just watching all those people try to get so from what they made it sound like people were thinking they could just cross the alley and get
Oh,
to,
right.
I
To
guess the
get to the
courthouse was
courthouse.
like higher.
And they
And
couldn't. They were getting
they were just
washed
watching
away.
people just getting taken out by that alley of like
That's
a
awful.
river.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, and because it's an alley, I'm sure that water is just rushing.
Ooh, that's so scary.
Yeah, it is. Okay, I have one last one. This one is from Emma Burney Beale, and she's 19. And she is one of the ones who's recounting watching burning
Like the
bodies.
aftermath. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a quote from Emma Burney Beale. I stood out there and watched them burn some bodies. It was right across the street on the corner of 37th and P. I recall this one body. The arm went up like that, and I screamed. I never will forget that. I just saw the hand go up. I'd stand there and watch them burn the bodies, and then I'd have nightmares and scream and holler. Oh, it was the most terrible thing. There's something crazy about you when you watch anything like that.
Ooh.
19 years old, and your life is never the same.
Yeah, like she said, just
She, like,
nightmares.
right. And like, there's something crazy about you when you watch anything like that.
Ugh.
That's like haunting.
And it's like so sad because I think it's human nature. We always talk about like
You want
looking
to,
at a
you're not going to
train
turn
wreck.
away. Yeah.
Yeah, but like, so she probably thinks like, why did I even look at that? But
It is, any of us would probably want to see what's going on. And yes, it's
yeah,
horrible and horrific. It's like, I have seen some pretty terrible car accidents in my day. Do I wish I would have seen it? No. But
yeah,
I willingly looked at it, you know?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, and the hand going up, like watching.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think I was listening to Morbid recently, and she was talking about like in the morgue sometimes how they'll
they
move.
like flitch. Shout out to our girls. We love
No.
Morbid.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Um,
But
yeah, that's a pretty sad story. I mean, and it's just so sad that communication was totally off. A lot of this probably could have been, I mean, obviously the hurricane was coming no matter what, but maybe people could have fled. They could have
yeah, they
went
could have
north.
evacuated,
Right.
which I don't know if
Um,
people back then were the same as they are now. Because I know even now, and you coastal people listening are
People stay.
likely to stay. Yeah, it takes a lot for people to evacuate.
I
But
get why people would evacuate and I get why people
yeah,
would stay. I can see both sides to it. But
absolutely.
nowadays, our houses are built just a little bit better
Yeah.
than
I've
they were,
seen
probably.
the last hurricane that hit Florida. Well, maybe it wasn't the last one, but it was one
Yeah.
that happened recently, and a lot of people were sharing about it on social media. So of course, with social media, we can see a lot more than what we used to. And Like this one girl I was following, her house like always floods when they have any kind of hurricane or whatever. So they knew they needed to leave, but
Right.
they had like all these cameras set up so they could look
Oh
and
wow, you
see
could
what was
watch it.
happening at their house, and they were just watching. And it was so crazy because when they evacuated, they just went around their house. They kind of knew like the what the storm surge might be. So they went around their house and just like piled stuff on top of other stuff to like just raise
Oh, to
it
like,
up.
yeah, like important things.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
they went and stayed in an Airbnb, or I think she was a doctor. So like I know not
Yeah,
everyone has the means to just go get an Airbnb in like
sure.
northern Florida or whatever, but yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, this is like, we talk I talk about this all the time, like in my daily life, how Nashville's weather has gotten really unpredictable and it's really scary, and how I would really not like to live here forever, probably because of this. But like people who live in Southern Florida, I
It's
think you
just
just
part of life.
adapt.
Hmm.
Yeah.
In
But I'm trying to
Texas.
move up north or something.
Well,
Get
then you
out of
get to
here.
put, oh, just wait. Our next episode is
It's a blizzard?
about a storm that goes up north. So you're not going to
Okay,
escape it no matter where
well,
you go.
we're moving somewhere, okay?
Yeah.
We're moving to Arizona.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, well,
Um,
that was a fun episode. Sad episode, but it's a good one.
well, let's wrap it up by talking a little bit about what's happened now with some predictions, and then what can you do? Like, basically, what are your options in a
Sure.
hurricane to do? But yes, that was
Sure.
a very sad story, and it was just a very high level overview. So definitely go read more about it. There's books, there's
Hmm.
even more survivor stories. I just picked a few. Um, but as you can imagine, over the years, there have been huge strides made in prediction of and warnings of hurricanes. Now the NOAA has multiple groups monitoring hurricanes. So I thought this was pretty cool. So they have the National Hurricane Center, the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, and then you have your local National Weather Service offices. And they are all constantly monitoring all the way from Guam over to Africa, because that's basically where these storms happen.
Hmm.
And they use everything from aircrafts to satellites, radars, and even buoys, which I did not
Mm,
know this was a thing. So the NOAA actually has a network of buoys that's called the National Data Buoy Center.
okay.
And these buoys send over data like water temperature and wave
Oh,
height.
wow. Oh, fascinating.
And they're just like all
Floating
over.
out there. That
Yeah,
is so smart.
I know. I thought that was really cool. I didn't know that.
I did not know that. That's cool.
So the standard nowadays is that people will have at least 5 days warning to prepare for a hurricane, and
Mhm.
you can make your decision of what to do. So how do you prepare for a hurricane? There's really only a couple of ways or a couple of options to think about. We touched on them. The first is evacuation.
Mhm.
So it's a good idea to have an evacuation plan in
Right.
place. Kind of like with tornadoes, we talk about have your safe space identified so that you already know like where
You
to go.
already know where you're going.
Hmm. So same thing with hurricanes. If have a plan to know that if you decide to evacuate, where are you going and what are you
Yeah.
taking?
Mhm.
How will you get there? Like the direction that you want to take on the map. And then go ahead and have a go bag ready with all of your important things if you do decide to leave. And the other option, of course, is shelter in place. And in this case, if you're going to shelter in place, you need to go ahead and be prepared that you may not have any power, water, gas, internet, etc. for quite some time.
Right. Like you probably won't have much.
Yeah. So if you are prepared, and a lot of my friends that live in coastal areas, they have generators. But
Right.
for generators, mostly you got to have gasoline, not all of
Mhm.
them, but a
A
lot.
lot of them.
And then lots of extra water because, as you mentioned earlier, like the plumbing,
Yeah, there's no
sewage,
drinking water available.
yeah, how are you going to go to the bathroom,
Hmm.
all of that. Um, so yeah, so those are your two options. And of course, you should get notification from the weather
Right.
services. So be
If not, the
aware.
ghost of Isaac will pass through your town.
He sure will. Isaac is coming to get you because he tried to tell you.
Yeah. He's got his buggy. Get in. Get in.
Mhm. Yep. So that's the story of the Great Galveston Hurricane.
I'm going to go research this some more because I do find it quite fascinating.
Yeah. Read more about Isaac and what happened that night because I can't remember
Yeah.
if I want to say that he did survive, but
Oh,
but many others in his family didn't.
yeah.
Or maybe it was the
I'll
other way
go find
around.
out.
I can't remember.
We'll be
But
looking that. We'll be looking
yeah.
that up.
So we
Cool.
will be back soon with another big storm that you and I lived through. So it's not an old timey one.
Oh, I think I know which one you're talking about.
So we'll be
Cool.
back soon with that one.
Cool. Well, you guys know where you can keep up with us. I'll just remind you Instagram, we are Weathered Podcast at Weathered Podcast. Our email address, which we would love to hear from you if you live in a hurricane town, give us like firsthand stories of like, did you evacuate? Do you stay? Why? Cool stuff like that.
We want to know.
Weatheredpodcast@gmail.com. And then we'll plug you into probably the next episode. And then on TikTok, and we're also on X at Weathered Pod, POD.
Yep.
And that's where you can find us.
Yeah. So until next time, stay weather
See ya.
aware.
Ooh, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.